This story is about a personal experience I had during a period when I was looking for a job. Living in a small rural town with limited job opportunities, I primarily focused my job applications on companies in big cities. Whenever I had an interview scheduled, I would make the arduous journey back and forth between my rural home and the city. This constant traveling was quite troublesome, but with no certainty about when or if I would get a job, I felt I had no other choice. My plan was to move to the city permanently once I found employment. However, despite my fervent desire to leave my rural home and embrace city life, I faced repeated rejections in the final stages of interviews. I had always considered myself quite competent and competitive, especially since I was outperforming my peers in my local town. But as I applied for jobs and attended interviews, I came to realize that the job market was far more competitive and challenging than I had anticipated. It was filled with numerous job seekers who were far more capable and had more impressive qualifications than I did. As a result, my confidence began to dwindle with each passing rejection. One day, when my confidence was at its lowest and I was feeling particularly downcast, I decided to seek comfort in a few bottles of beer. Late that night, I walked to a nearby convenience store and bought a couple of bottles. Many of my close friends had already successfully found jobs and moved to big cities, so I couldn't reach out to them for a drink together to lift my spirits. Feeling left out, I ended up drinking alone, sitting at a table in front of the convenience store. As I sat there, wallowing in self-pity and drinking my beer, a sleek, expensive-looking black sedan pulled up and parked in front of me. I couldn't help but admire the car, thinking to myself, how nice it would be to drive a car like that. I cursed and lamented my pathetic situation under my breath. As I continued to admire the car, I noticed something peculiar. The last 4 digits of the car's license plate were almost identical to the last 4 digits of my cell phone number, differing by just 1 number. What a coincidence, I thought to myself. After indulging in my self-pity for a while, I finished my beer and headed back home, still feeling depressed. A few days had passed since that night. One afternoon, I was on my way to the nearby market to do some food shopping. As I walked, I noticed a poster asking for any witnesses to a recent car accident. I glanced at the words, "fatal accident," and thought to myself, oh, someone must have gotten killed in the accident. The thought lingered for a moment, but I soon brushed it aside. After arriving at the market, I bought the necessary items and headed straight home, not giving the poster another thought. That night, however, I had a truly horrifying nightmare that I will never forget. In the dream, I was driving a car down a desolate road. Up ahead, there was a young woman standing in the direction I was headed. As is often the case in dreams, I found myself unable to move as much as I wanted to. That night was no exception. Despite my efforts, I couldn't hit the brakes hard enough and ended up hitting the woman. In a panic, I got out of the car to check on her, but she was nowhere to be found. I looked frantically everywhere, but there was no trace of her. Dumbfounded, just as I turned to get back into the car, a woman covered in blood appeared right in front of me, screaming,
"You should have stayed and called for help. Why did you take off from the scene?"
Her voice was so loud that my ears were ringing for a while, and then I woke up in shock. The dream was so vivid that I was both terrified and relieved that it wasn't real. I dismissed it as my subconscious mind holding on to the memory of seeing the poster earlier. However, the next day, I had another extremely vivid dream. This time, the dream took me back to the scene in front of the convenience store where I had been drinking beer a few nights ago. Just like before, a car pulled up in front of me. It was the exact same car I had seen then. When I looked at the car from where I was sitting, I noticed a woman standing right next to it, glaring furiously at the driver. It was the same woman I saw in my dream from the other night. Then suddenly, she shifted her glare to me and left me with these words before disappearing.
If you find this man, I'll reward you.
When I woke up, I thought, what a crazy dream, 2 in a row. Usually I forget my dreams as soon as I wake up, but these 2 were so vivid that they lingered in my mind all day. A couple of days passed. I was on my way to the market to buy something when I passed by the convenience store where I had been drinking the other night. I noticed another identical poster looking for witnesses, just like the one I had seen the other day on my way to the market. Again, I passed by without a second thought, but then I started thinking about those 2 dreams from a few nights ago. People often tend to connect the dots, even when events may not necessarily be related. I also felt like they were somehow all connected, those crazy dreams and the accident described on the poster. On my way back home, I decided to read the poster more carefully. It listed the date and estimated time of the accident, which matched the late night time when I was drinking alone in front of the convenience store. It even specified the color of the vehicle involved in the hit and run, black. A sense of unease washed over me as I realized the potential significance of what I had seen. Feeling compelled to act, I called the number on the poster. I learned that they still hadn't found the hit and run culprit. I called the police station and at their request, went there to give an official witness statement. There I learned that the victim who had died was a young woman, and unfortunately, they hadn't secured any witnesses or CCTV footage to help identify the perpetrator. The only information they had obtained was that it was a black sedan. I explained to the officers that I wasn't certain the car I saw was the one involved in the accident, but coincidentally, the date and time matched, and it also happened to be a black car. I also mentioned that I remembered the car specifically because its license plate number was almost identical to the last 4 digits of my cell phone number. Even though I wasn't guilty of anything, I felt quite nervous throughout the process. Some time passed, and then I received a call from the detective. He informed me that they had finally caught the hit-and-run driver. Thanks to the car plate number I had provided, they were able to significantly narrow down the suspects, which sped up the investigation. The culprit was indeed driving the car I had described. The police thanked me for providing valuable information. Before receiving this call from the detective, I had attended 2 job interviews and received final acceptance notices from both places. This allowed me to move to the big city, fulfilling my long-held aspiration. I firmly believe that the victim's spirit kept the promise made in my dream, guiding me to help bring justice and in turn helping me find my path forward. But questions remain. Why did the spirit of the woman visit me? Perhaps even though I was at a different time and place, I was the first to witness that vehicle right after the accident. And those visits by that woman, they may not have been mere dreams as I had previously thought. They could have been real.